Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Jordan Elsass. You might recognize me from the show Superman and Lois. You, my friends, are watching Completed It with Andy Burrows. It's your one-stop shop for everything pop culture related. Enjoy the show. I know I sure do.
Everybody, back to yet another Completed It. I'm your host, Andy Burrows, and we are here to talk more pop culture, movies, and TV. And this week, I'm pretty sure this guy is my oldest friend. Knowing this guy since I was probably about this big, and I can't do a Star Wars episode. I call him Mr. Star Wars because if he doesn't, he probably knows as much as George Lucas. It's one of my best friends and one of my oldest friends in the entire world, Mr. Sacha Allari. Sacha, how are you, brother?
All good, mate. All good, Andrew. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been a really long time, man.
No, I know, man. It's good to see you. It's good to see you doing well, my man. But I couldn't. When I've started this journey, we've talked DC, we've talked Marvel. Everyone knows me that knows I'm a big pop culture fan. Everyone knows me knows Star Wars is one of my most favorite franchises of all time. I couldn't talk Star Wars without you, my man. I know me and you keep in contact on WhatsApp. We have very busy lives, but it's good to still keep in contact with you, Satch. Satch, let's start from the very beginning. Why is Star Wars so important to you?
It's probably one of the first films I ever saw, to be quite honest, man.
Mm.
Like, it's the whole reason why I love cinema, to be quite honest. Like, it was probably the first film where when you look the first making of movie, how behind the scenes kind of thing. I remember watching a behind the scenes on Return of Jedi, how they made it and stuff, and you see the little models and the paintings and stuff, and that's what actually got me like into film and cinema and stuff, like more like, oh my god, that's a painting. Oh my god, that's a miniature. You know what I mean? Like, that's the stuff that gravitated me towards like really liking Star Wars. But then obviously, back in the 90s, you had the comic books like Dark Force. What's it? No, what was it? Dark Forces was a video game. Dark Empire came out
Hmm.
by Dark Horse Comics, and then you had the Zahn trilogy books, and the Kevin J. Anderson ones and stuff like that. And that whole expanded universe, we didn't have no movies that came out every 5 minutes. So we just read, and as me being a comic book nerd, that was, it was I was eventually gonna come across stuff like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis in a comic book store like Calamity Comics, which
Oh,
was
we had many
our
a good time
local,
in there, bro.
yeah, local comic book store back in Harrow, which is now unfortunately closed down. But
Yeah, there's
um,
not many. I get mine. Well, I go to a comic book store in Ellsbury now to get a lot of mine, or I just order them online. I think it's a dying breed, which is something we're gonna get into. But what role do you think, Satch? I speak to people all the time about movies and stuff. What role does Star Wars play in pop culture?
well, it's probably the holiest fucking the holiest of sci-fi, man.
Mm. It
Some
is pop
Trekkies,
culture.
some Trekkies might feel mad at me, but Star Wars invented pop culture, man. I mean, like, you know, like sci-fi back in the 70s was, well, okay, you had Star Trek on the TV. Sure, you had 2001 that came out a very long time ago, but when you think of the landscape of 70s cinema, you had all those dirty, gritty kind of like movies like Taxi Driver and Mean Streets, and heavy dramas and crime things like The Godfather and stuff, And the only other end of the spectrum was kung fu movies and black
Hmm.
exploitation movies that were low budget action movies and that kind of thing. So you never really had a big blockbuster movie till Star Wars came. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Star Wars was the first or the second blockbuster because Jaws predates it
Yeah,
like a year
really
before.
Spielberg. Yeah.
But those two films created the Hollywood blockbuster, which then became like the Jerry Bruckheimer blockbuster in our day, and then that kind of morphed into Marvel, because now it's just Marvel, DC, Star Wars, like those are the big blockbusters now. But Star Wars was the OG, you know what I
Mm.
mean? So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it played such a part in our upbringing. Why do you think it was? What was it about Star Wars? Because, like you said, there was stuff before it. There's been stuff after it, which we're gonna get into. Some of it good, some of it not so good. What was it about Star Wars that captivated? Because when you do look at the making of the very first Star Wars and you look at what George Lucas done, you look at, and I know yourself, you're into your filmmaking and you're very much, you know that industry pretty much inside out. For someone that, hasn't produced a big screen movie, I know how much you love the going into the in-depth of filmmaking. So what was it about the original Star Wars trilogy that really do you think captivated people? Was it it's something that we hadn't seen before? Was it the style that we'd seen before? Is it what some George Lucas brought something different to the table? What do you think about it was the original Star Wars when it first come out that really captivated an audience?
Well, that was just it. I mean, like big budget visual effects weren't a thing back
Mm.
then. You know what I mean? Like, sure, he had stuff for models and stuff before, but he completely changed the game in the way visual effects sold a movie back then. Like, if you look at like Star Trek, you had the Enterprise on a string going at the camera. You know what I mean? But they changed it. They got Dennis Moran, the guy at ILM. He had the camera on a rig, and they would have the models just stood there, and they'd move the camera rather than move
Mm.
the models and stuff. And that created movement within the frame and stuff, and it was just state of the art shit back then. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Even I would argue, even after A New Hope, you had all the replica movies. I'd say, when one thing comes out and then they try
Yeah.
to replicate it, they had like Buck Rogers, Battlestar, Battle Beyond the Stars with George Peppard, and loads of other ones. But when you look at the effects on those, they were close but no cigar. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
They didn't like Star Wars actually lasted for decades after that. You know what I mean? All up until the 90s till they updated them. You know what I mean? And even then, the movie itself still looked good. You know what? Funnily enough, I watched A New Hope, the 1977 version, because I don't know
Hmm.
whether you know, there's a couple of guys, they got free prints of the movie, actual cinema prints of the movie, and frame by frame fixed it, got rid of dirt, updated it to play on a DVD like
Hmm.
now or
Wow.
a Blu-ray now, and it plays in 4K. They've made it in 4K and everything, and because obviously Disney and Lucasfilm, they have George Lucas never did an original print, so you can now watch that online in 4K. They call it 4K 77,
Hmm.
and it's actually the original Star
Star Wars.
Wars, and it's even not got the Episode 4 on it
Wow.
as well. I've actually got a copy. So yeah, had to be done.
I need to get my hands on on one of them, bro. But it's, we mentioned George Lucas there.
Yeah.
From where his vision started to where it is now, which we're going to get onto later with Disney and et cetera, because that's split opinion like you wouldn't believe. With the vision that George Lucas originally had for Star Wars, do you think he ever envisioned it being where it went to and where it is today?
No, I don't think so. I think he just went to make the best movie he could possibly make. But I think while in development of making A New Hope, he had like loads of ideas for this thing. It kind of naturally became a bigger thing than he anticipated that it would be. And then he was like, you know what, if I am going to do sequels and stuff, let's see how well this one does, and
Hmm.
we'll save these other ideas for other movies if an occasion were to come down the line. Funnily enough, he was going to do a second one regardless. If it had bombed, he would have done a low budget version of Star Wars.
Of Empire Strikes Back kind of thing.
Actually, funnily enough, when he did A New Hope,
Mm.
he commissioned author called Alan. What's it? Alan Dean. Someone correct me in the comments and stuff. Whoever did the novel for A New Hope, that wrote the
Hmm.
novel, because obviously Lucas wrote the script,
Yep.
but they got a novelist to write. I think it's Alan Dean Foster. Is that his name?
Might be you're gonna
Might
know,
be.
but if you don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
then
yeah.
I'm definitely not gonna.
It's been a long time, mate, because like, hang on, wait, let me just Google that because I got it in front of me. Alan Dean. Yeah, it is.
There you
Yeah,
go.
Alan Dean Foster. Yeah, that's right. So basically, he commissioned him to write a script without Han Solo called Splinter of the, and it ended up being the book Splinter of the Mind's Eye
Hmm.
kind of thing. But that doesn't have Han
Han
Solo
Solo in
because
it, yeah.
yeah, and the reason for that is because Harrison Ford didn't sign on for 3 pictures. He signed for one.
One. Mm-hmm.
So he was never a guarantee to come back. And if he was to come back, he would cost more, kind of thing. So whereas the other two, they signed a 3 picture deal. So they're cheaper. So that's why they.
No.
So yeah. So I think he would have done more, but it all depended how successful A New Hope was. You know what I mean? But I don't think he thought it would be where it is now. No one can anticipate that. I think he genuinely thought he'd go off and make different kinds of movies and stuff. And the thing was, he was never a big blockbuster person because blockbusters didn't exist. He was more an indie fuck the system guy, you know. So, you know, if you look at his first film, THX 1138, that was completely bonkers for, you know, the kinds of films that was out at the time, you know what I mean? And that was a massive flop when it came out. And, you know, when you look at it now, so that too was quite ahead of its time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we had New Hope, and it but literally burst onto the scene. If anyone's seen the Star Wars documentary about it, or you'll know how it started to change pop culture. We obviously had The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi. As a fan of the original three, when you look back now again to where Star Wars is, did you even as a fan think, wow, this is literally while you're in the midst of it when we were growing up, did you think we'd be sitting here in 2025 still talking about Star Wars?
You know what? Yes, I did. Because when we were in school, I remember getting a copy of Dark Empire, the British print of Dark Empire, the comic book, and in it, this was around 93 or 92. No, 92, I think. I could be wrong. But it was around the time when Lucas would have been helping Spielberg out on Jurassic Park, because what a lot of people don't know, George Lucas, when Spielberg shot Jurassic Park, right after filming it, while Jurassic Park was doing the visual effects and the editing, he had to go film Schindler's List in Poland and Germany, basically. So he wasn't there to supervise post of Jurassic Park. So he entrusted George Lucas to do that. So obviously they're working on the CG dinosaurs then. The minute they made the T-Rex walking up Brontosaurus and stuff, George Lucas was like, right, I'm going back to Star Wars. So in an interview around that time, he said to whoever was interviewing him that it's time to make 1, 2, and 3. And that in a copy of Dark Empire, you know what I mean? I must have been like 13, 14, maybe even 12. You know what I mean? It's around that kind of era of like high school. I was definitely high school. And I was just like, holy shit, they're making more Star Wars. You know what I mean? So I knew it was coming. It was just a case of when. And I remember turning around in D&T, Mr. Goodman's class. I turned around to you. Me and you were talking, we're talking about it. And then this guy called Stephen Atack, he overheard. He's like, there ain't no Star Wars. Then it's never gonna come out. Blah blah blah. You're chatting out your ass.
Big shout out to Steve. I'm still friends with him on Facebook. I think.
I've got him on Facebook.
He's doing well in life.
He's
doing well in life. Did you when Empire? A lot of people say to me, and I still have this discussion with people. They prefer Empire Strikes Back to New Hope. In a lot of people's opinion, Empire Strikes Back is the greatest Star Wars movie of all time. In a lot of people's opinion. Where do you sit with it, Satch? Obviously, me and you have spoke about this. Probably, God, like you say, we've known each other. Well, we've known each other since we were about 4 years old. But you know, as we grew up and we were in high school, and we're talking about Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back kicks. You don't get many movies where the bad guy, quote unquote, is the favorite. Where does it sit? What being such a big Star Wars fan, what sits with you as your most favorite Star Wars movie?
See, okay, I'll be honest with you. Picking you know what my favorite film of all time is? It's none of the Star Wars films.
Nope.
And that's deliberate. That is deliberate because with Star Wars, it's like Sophie's Choice. Right? You ever see Sophie's Choice?
I know you're on about. Yep.
Yeah. So it's like Sophie's Choice with me. I can't pick one out of those specific 3. Okay. Now, here's the thing. They're not wrong when they say The Empire Strikes Back, because that is the best made movie out of all 3
Agreed.
of them. I agree. Okay, like Ivan Kershner Like he looked at what George Lucas did and he brought it up a notch on all
Mm.
levels.
Because there's always pressure when you make the follow up to such a big hit like New Hope,
Exactly.
isn't there? You know, we see it with like
Exactly.
recording artists. You release one good album and the second album tanks. So there's a lot of pressure after New Hope because it did do so well. So when you release Empire Strikes Back, everyone's probably thinking, geez, this is going to have to go somewhere. And then you watch Empire Strikes Back and you're like, this is better than the original.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
You know,
right.
it has split, like you say, you can't choose out of the original three. I mean, for me, Empire Strikes Back is my favorite one, but
Mm.
it was back then. It was like you like the one that's well, you know, it's all about the bad guys. I'm like, yeah, I like that side of Star Wars. I'm Darth Vader more than I am Luke. We don't, that
Yeah.
again, that splits opinion. But yeah, like you say, you haven't got a favorite Star Wars movie.
Not out of the three. And but may I say, it's like that first movie. I love the spaceship battles.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I love the spaceship battles. I love the world building. I'd say A New Hope has some of the best world building in fucking modern day cinema. I mean, the
Mm.
only other film that comes close is Fellowship of the Ring, in my opinion.
Great movie.
The way it just builds the world and you
Hmm.
know nothing about anything. Imagine watching that film. Obviously we've seen it a billion times, but when you look at, I'll give you a best one. You ever see these YouTubers reacting to videos?
Ah, yeah, yeah.
I love watching that shit,
Hmm.
right? So when you watch someone look at it for the first time, they don't even know what planet they're on. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, some people that don't know shit from anything, they're like, "Oh, so is Earth in this?" Because they literally have no bearing. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And like, you come at it from the two lowest life forms, being R2 and 3PO, and then basically, you see the world through their eyes throughout the first 20 minutes of the movie, and there's
Hmm.
just so much world building going on because you're on a spaceship, then you're on a sand planet, and you're like, is this just a planet with a bit of sand, or is there a
Yeah, and
city
a few
later on?
crazy little
And
people
then
running around.
yeah, and then you've got like midgets, and then you're like, and then you
Sounds
go
like a
into
night and Harrow.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, seriously, you have no idea.
We
Yeah,
won't go there. We won't go there. But no,
but like,
you're right. I mean, it's literally such a synonymous part of movie history. And like you say, they were building to tell a story where I don't even think they thought that we'd still be sitting here in 2025, and we're going to get into what they've done. So that when they wrapped the franchise up, when they then wrapped the franchise up with Return of the Jedi, are you of the opinion, Satch, that then that was the perfect ending for the franchise? Again, we're going to get into the whole, we'll flip it to Phantom Menace and but back then, and even now, I mean, I still chat to people about this. We talk about that. You're like, Only Fools and Horses. Should it just have ended when they got all the money, etc., etc.? Frasier, should it have ended when it ended? They brought that back. For you, was Return of the Jedi the perfect ending for the franchise? Or did you think, well, okay, I'd like to see more?
what when you're asking me that, are you asking what I thought then or
Yeah, that's what I'm
now?
saying. So then,
Oh,
did you think? Yeah, I mean, then
then.
and now. I
Okay,
mean, that's what I'm saying.
okay,
As fans back watching Return of
okay.
the Jedi,
So
you were
then,
like,
oh
"That's
yeah,
a
yeah.
great. It's a perfect ending. It's
Oh yeah,
brilliant." They ended it. But then when you look at it now in 2025, and we're going to get into what they've done since, and Disney, etc., etc., and I think that's different from where the movie world is now. Movies are very
yeah,
much like, let's make a. I just recently saw Mufasa the Lion King. That movie was purely made for the name. That
yeah.
is it, in my opinion. And they do that a lot with movies these days. But back then, when you and me were, however old we were when Return of the Jedi were coming out, that was the perfect ending to what I thought was the end of a franchise. You're like, they can go off into the sunset.
Hmm.
So, how back then did you think perfect way to end this?
Well, back then when that came out, I was 3 years old. So you know
When,
what I mean.
sorry, when you were older,
But
when you were
but when
watching
I
it.
but when I
Yeah.
was but when I was older and watching it, we have all these games and books and stuff. Of course, I was
Mm,
like, oh man, I want them. I want there to be more.
mm,
Because back then it was the 80s or the 90s, and we were getting more of everything else, and we weren't getting more of the stuff we wanted. You know what I
mm.
mean? So it's like, why am I getting Lethal Weapon 4? I want fucking Star Wars 7, you know?
Getting another lethal weapon next year, by the way. Just saying.
We'll see. We'll see.
Oh,
I think it will
yeah. Mel
happen. I think
Gibson's
it
made the
might
promise,
happen.
innit? Yeah, he made the promise.
Yeah,
But
he has.
yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, Star Wars. It was a for me. It was a when we were the age to get and watch Return of the Jedi. It was a perfect ending to a franchise that I'd grown up with. Thought it was brilliant. The story got rounded off. I mean, the way that they intertwined all the characters and everything. For me, it was the perfect ending. Fast forward now, such Phantom Menace. hits our screens, and you find out that they're being the Star Wars fan that you were. What was your reaction when you
Oh,
first heard about Star Wars coming back in the movie format, and they were going to the prequels set before New Hope?
Stephen Atak. I told you, bitch. I told you. That's what went through my mind. No. Yeah, no. To be, what was my impressions when I saw it?
No,
Or
when you found out that they were
when I
kind of
found out
rebooting it and they were telling the prequel story.
I was telling the prequel story. Well, I found that out back when I picked up that copy of Dark Empire. Man, I knew they were making it, so I waited from '92 to '99. Man, I
Yeah.
waited like 9 years for that shit. Before everyone cottoned on. I remember waking up early in the morning for the big breakfast,
God, Channel 4, yeah.
Channel 4, the big breakfast, to tape on VHS
God,
the
we're off.
Phantom Menace trailer.
Wow. Taping the trailer. Imagine
Taping
saying
the
that to
trailer.
people. I said that to my
Yeah.
daughter now. She would look at me like I've got two heads.
Yeah, dude, I had that. I rinsed that trailer. I fucking
Mm.
had it. I showed it. People that hadn't seen it, I'd be like, I got the trailer on VHS.
Dude,
Fucking
I
sad,
remember
but
running
yeah.
to, I think it was Argos to watch the Revenge of the Sith trailer. They had it on the big screen all day, every day. And I worked at the time next to an Argos. And they were like, what are you doing at lunchtime? I was like, I'm going down to Argos to watch the Revenge of the Sith trailer again. They were like, oh my God, now you can just jump on YouTube and it's like, it's all there. Are
Oh, back.
are you a fan of the prequels?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. They have their flaws, sure. Yeah, and you can talk. I think online they've talked immensely about their flaws, but you know what? Um, Here's why I like well, I've always liked the prequels. I mean, out of the three, I'd say Attack of the Clones is the worst one, in my opinion. Okay, a lot of people are like, no, that's the best one, but like, I was never against Phantom Menace because I was like, look, there are two more left. There are two more left. We knew he was going to be a little kid because of the trailers and
Yeah, and you
stuff.
have to tell that story at some
Yeah,
stage.
yeah. It's like let the man tell his story because it's
Mm,
his thing. He invented it, right?
yeah.
Let him tell his story, and then at the end, if it's bullshit, then fair enough. And I personally didn't think it was bullshit. I enjoyed the shit out of those. Come on, man, Darth
Darth
Maul,
Maul,
Darth Maul, bro,
one of the greatest characters in my.
mate.
I actually, when they brought him back in the animated series, or when it's in, obviously,
Yeah,
Clone Wars is, Clone Wars is with the original series, and I think no, Rebels was twinned in with the original Star Wars, wasn't it? And Clone Wars was 2000, something like that. So when you
yeah,
saw Darth Maul in the animated series, I was like, man, I'm so glad they've done this because that's the one thing that I didn't like about Phantom Menace, that this badass had never seen anything like it before, and they killed him. I'm like, fuck's sake. I absolutely love that character. I mean, Phantom Menace for me, it gets a bad rap, but
yeah,
I'm with you. They had to. It was never going to be this little 4 or 5 year old running around yielding like some sort of
yeah.
there was never going to be this story. But I think what had happened is obviously you'd had New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, to Return of the Jedi, and then when you flip it all the way back to the beginning, people are like, "This isn't Star Wars," and you're like, "Well, it is, but it's just not Star Wars as you know it." Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, look, if it was by a big Hollywood studio, they just would have remade A New Hope.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Those are bigger
No, they
Death
do that
Star.
too. Oh, they do that so much
Yeah,
these
but I
days.
mean, but
Oh,
I mean,
goodness.
they just would have done like they just would have recreated all the beats of the original trilogy by that's what a studio would have done. But a filmmaker like George Lucas would be like, no, Darth Vader's a little boy.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Let's see the story of
Yeah,
Anakin Skywalker.
he's a little boy, and she'll be like a bit older than him. Yeah, I mean, and
Mm.
all of this stuff, because that's the story, the way he's constructed it. But a studio would be like, oh no, we want to replicate that. And if you think about it, like it doesn't copy the action beats of
The
4, 5,
original.
and 6.
Yeah.
It's like you have like the Clone Army in number 2. You have these crazy saber fights. You have pod
It must
racing.
be hard though, Satch, do you reckon? Because there's someone that's the movie industry a little bit. From when you made the original three to when you made Phantom Menace, movie making had changed as well.
Well, yeah, it had, but he changed it.
Mm.
He changed movie making. See, Lucas doesn't get enough credit, I feel, because he changed the way films are made. All the Marvel and shit would not exist without George fucking Lucas.
Mm.
Phantom Menace created digital software to edit the way we do on films now, or even on our cameras and our phones now. Phantom Menace was that debut movie where Avid, where you could edit on Avid and edit on Adobe Premiere and shit. That was one of the first ones. Like there was if you look at the making of the Phantom Menace, there's a scene where Ewan McGregor, he's like talking to the captain driving the ship, the Queen Star ship, and they're escaping Naboo, and like there's a take where he's talking to the geezer, and then Lucas looks at it and he looks at a couple of other takes. He goes, "What if I like what this guy's doing over there, and here's Ewan McGregor doing the take here? What if we split it in the middle, have him do his thing there, and have him, you know what I mean? Have you? That's After Effects before After Effects.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's loads of stuff like those films, the original three, they pushed away movie making, the way movies were made back then. And all the prequels did was change the way movies were made in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, look at it. Like, Jar Jar Binks. Okay. Yeah, sure. Say what you like about him. But he was the first thespian.
He's probably the character that gets poo-pooed on the most in Star Wars.
But he was the first. And then what happened? While they were filming Phantom Menace, Peter Jackson came to the set of Phantom Menace because he had Weta. He just built Weta and he wanted that technology for Gollum. You know what I mean? And here, the biggest difference was he got a really trained actor like Andy Serkis for Gollum. And Serkis really put that performance in, you know what I mean? And created a whole business out of motion capture, digital beings, I mean, fuck, we've got Harrison Ford come in as Red Hulk soon, doing that. I want to see the motion capture outtakes for that, because that's going to be joke.
That is going to be funny. But obviously, so we flip it back to the prequels. We go through Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. Throughout the prequels, where a lot of people's perception is, I'm waiting to see Anakin turn into Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Did you like the way that it was done? Because again, Revenge of the Sith, sorry, is a lot of people. Again, this comes back to what you were saying earlier. That is a lot of people's favorite movie.
Oh yeah,
I must have gone to the cinema to see that. No word of a lie, over 10 times. I went to see that movie because it was back then. It was like, well, okay, I knew the original trilogy. I knew how we got to this is Darth Vader. I want to see how we got to be Darth Vader. Do you think that's something that they done well? I mean, again, it's something that splits opinion when you speak to Star Wars fans. I watch loads of stuff. I'm a bit like you, Satch. I watch loads of geeky crap on YouTube. People are like, oh, they shouldn't have done it like this. They shouldn't have done it like that. But I think they done it well. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I think they done it. I do have an opinion on this. I do have, but I don't feel strongly about it. Does that make sense? Like,
no,
sure. There's loads of things I would have done differently with the prequels for sure. But I think the one I would have done the most is Attack of the Clones, because that's my least favorite out of the six.
That's for me, that's a bit of a love story, that movie.
It's not even that. It's just there's no chemistry between the two fucking main characters. There's no way she would fall in love with him. Seriously, come on, brah. You know what I mean? Come on, bro.
Out of his league.
Not even out of his league. The guy's a little puss, man. Like throughout the whole fucking thing. No, yeah, dude. There's no, I just thought it was unbelievable. But like, yeah, it's a love story. I just felt it could have been written better. You should have got.
What's your theory on the third one?
Let's get back to the third one. So the third one's a much better film in general. Like everything, it's more focused on his journey. So Christensen's a lot better in it as well. He's not a bad actor. It's
growing
just
into the character a lot by that movie.
Yeah, that too. And the focus is where it should be, on him, and he carries it, I feel, really well. What would I have changed about it? Yeah, the main thing I would have changed about that, and a lot of people will be like, no, blah, blah, blah. But this is devil's advocate thing. All right. When Anakin's left for dead, I would never have went back to him for Vader. I would never have shown the birth of Vader.
Oh, really?
Don't get me wrong, the Birth of Vader's cool. The way it's shot
The
is
cinematic,
yeah, even the way it's shot is really
right.
well done,
Yeah.
and all of that stuff is really well done. I would never have had it in there.
Okay.
I would never have had it in there. I wouldn't have even, and the other thing, I would never have had him be called Darth Vader. Yeah, yeah, I just would have had it. Anakin's turned bad.
Oh, okay. I see what you've done.
Do,
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
see what I
yeah.
mean?
No, I like it. I like it,
So
actually.
that
Yeah.
because this is the problem with it. It's like when people watch Star Wars, they go start with 4, 5, and 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to see the
Yeah, and then
moment,
go
right?
back. Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
it is one of the greatest moments in fucking cinema history, right?
Mm.
That's without a fucking doubt.
Yeah.
I think everyone can vouch for that. All
Yeah.
right. However, you know, if you were to watch it 1 to 6, you're robbed of that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So everything I would have done would be to preserve that moment, no matter which way you watch it. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
So because and that would actually ultimately make the viewing experience better. Because here's the thing: the first twist, for those that don't know, in the prequels is still the Palpatine thing. Because so
Mm-hmm.
many people walk into that fresh and they'll be like, oh, blah, they might not trust the senator, but do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They don't think of him immediately,
Yeah.
right? So you've got that. Then there's the layer twist. And well, I guess you have to see the other ones to
Yeah,
make
if you hadn't
that
seen the
even
other one, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
most
But
people would have got it.
but I would have preserved the I am your father at all costs. That's
Okay.
all. That's
Mm-hmm.
all I would have changed in, and that's not a big change from the movie that we got. It's just taking out, like Emperor going back, and you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
That kind,
mate, it's an interesting take. I mean,
yeah.
well, I quite like it if I'm honest. I mean,
I would keep a lot of what George put in Revenge of the Sith, because there's nothing in there that's bad. I think, I think all the bad stuff was taken out. You know,
mm,
um,
yeah.
it's a solid film, man, and there's a reason why it's everyone's favorites. But that's the only thing. Those are the only two things I would have done. So
Okay.
when he goes rise, Darth Vader, I'd have him rise, but I wouldn't have the dialogue. You know what I mean? I'd film it in a way like how Ridley Scott
You will
does and
now be
stuff.
known as Darth Vader.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
I do have one more thing.
Mm.
I wouldn't have had the Emperor get scarred up and start talking like a fucking crazy person. All right. Because
Some crazy old man.
no, but here's the thing, yeah. We know he's the Emperor. All he has to do is wear the fucking hood. He didn't need to
Yeah.
get scarred. There was no reason for that. And that fight, what's it? That bit where
Mace
he's like,
Windu.
yeah, yeah, that you know what? Okay. I will I've created a fourth thing. Shit.
See, that's what we do on this
This is
show.
what happened. But all right, it's all related to the same scene though. The
Mm.
fight between Windu and Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
It's all right for what it is. It's all right for what it is. Unfortunately, because I'm a super nerd, Nick Golland, who was the stunt coordinator of the prequels, great guy. He he actually did the fight with all the stunt doubles, right?
Mm.
But for real. So when Ian McDiarmid does that cartwheel backflip and stuff, that's CGI.
Right.
That's not an actual stuntman. That's CGI. It's all digital. Him doing the back, and when you
Mhm.
look at it, it looks a bit
Suspect.
uncanny. It looks a
Yeah.
bit uncanny valley. Whereas, I'm really big into like my fucking martial arts and Jackie Chan and shit like that. Kung fu movies and stuff. And the Phantom Menace, in my opinion, has the best lightsaber battle of all
Oh,
time.
dude, Darth
In my
Maul, man.
opinion,
Yeah.
Darth Maul. So the same guy that did the Darth Maul fight had this big spectacle of a fight, which you can check some of it online with the stunt doubles, and it looked amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But then George came in and was like, "No, Ian McDiarmid's going to do the fight scene himself." Ian McDiarmid isn't a fighter,
Mm-hmm.
and he could barely walk. You know what I mean? So do you know what I mean? Now you're doing a fight scene with a guy with limited movement now, and you're
Yeah.
just going to aid him with CGI. It looked a bit uncanny valley. So fight scene, yeah, all the things I mentioned. Oh yeah, and don't have Emperor get burnt because look, by the time it's Return of the Jedi, he's a fucking old wrinkly man anyway. We get it. We don't need the over explanation. You know what I mean?
No, you're right. You're right, bro.
That's all my nitpickings, guys.
That's it.
That's
That's
it.
it.
I swear to
No
God.
more nitpicking
No more
of
nitpickings
the
on
of the.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, exactly. Satch, let's fast forward to the modern day, and we get the Force Awakens and the quote unquote new trilogy once Disney
Oh,
get their hands in it. Just before we get into the movies, were you a fan of George Lucas no longer being involved in Star Wars and Disney taking control of it? Because we're going to get into a little bit with it. We've got about 15, 20 minutes left. We're going to
yeah.
get into a little bit of the TV spin-offs. And I done a show earlier on in the week where with the Brothers at Geek Out podcast, and we talked about spin-offs and reboots and TV shows and what role that plays in movies now. For me, it's very easy just to forget a movie and be like Marvel and make 20,000 TV spin-offs,
Yeah.
and you have to watch nearly all of them because it's going to tie into one movie. Fucking drives me fucking crazy. When Disney got hold of the Star Wars franchise, Satch,
Yeah.
knowing you how I know you and know how passionate you are about this franchise, I can imagine that you had some strong views then. You probably still got some strong views now with The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, etc., etc. What did you think when you found out that George Lucas had sold the Star Wars rights to Disney?
I was actually semi-excited, to be quite honest. I was like, we're going to get some new stuff. Looks like we're going to get 7, 8, and 9. Let's go.
Mm,
That honestly,
yeah.
that's what I thought. That's generally what. And here's the thing: I didn't hate George. I wasn't like a prequel hater. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, oh,
At any stage, was he
it's
going to do 7, 8, and 9?
yeah, it's come
Yeah.
out. Yes,
So
he
yeah, he was
was.
going to do 7, 8, and 9, right? And then just Disney just made him an offer that he couldn't refuse.
Well, yeah, it was like he was going to be a dad's. You know what I mean? He
Mm.
was going to be a dad. He's got a young son, and he was like, well, my other children, I didn't really see them grow up. He's an older guy now,
Hmm.
and he was just like, you know what? And plus, the other thing was he built his companies from the ground up, and he wanted, if he was going to sell, he wanted to secure the employment of all his friends that came up with him,
Hmm.
and there a lot of those guys have either left now under Disney or some of them are still there. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
still there, but that's because of George Lucas keeping to his word and looking after his friends. So,
What did you make of what they done with the quote unquote the new trilogy? Because obviously there's a whole new audience now. Don't get me wrong, you probably would have to go back and watch the back
do you
catalogue
do you
of
want
Star
to do you
Wars.
want to
But
talk it per
no,
film?
you don't have to do it per film. Just in
Okay,
general, you can say because
okay,
it splits so many opinion, but there's so many things that you can take from this. A
yeah,
lot of people I speak to say, "This is fucking awful. I don't like it. How the hell have you ended the Luke Skywalker story when he's at quote unquote alive before he becomes a Force ghost?" And I've heard some interviews with Mark Hamill himself saying about the Last Jedi movie, and how much he pretty much hated it. He wanted to go in one creative direction. Disney were like, no, this is the creative direction we want to go in. Were you a fan of the way that they ended the on-screen alive before he was a Force ghost of Luke Skywalker? Bearing in mind how much we'd all grown up with, how much
yeah,
effort had gone into the obviously Luke, Han, Leia, etc., etc. That whole
yeah.
story. Then you get to the Last Jedi, and I wasn't a huge fan of the way Mark Hamill is definitely every interview you watch with him asking him about that movie,
Yeah.
it's probably he could sit there and rant for about an hour. What did you think, mate?
Okay, so this is a two-part question. The Force Awakens was probably one of the best cinema experiences of my life. I'll
Graphically,
be
that was
I'll be
incredible, that
I'll
movie.
be I'll be honest with you. Yeah, it was a new hope in disguise, but like I said earlier,
They
like a
were
CG,
reintroducing an
yeah,
audience as well, though, I think. A
yeah,
new
yeah,
audience into the
totally.
Star Wars franchise. They were what we were back in the day, Satch, I
Oh yeah,
reckon.
yeah, totally, totally. And I totally understand that for that. And I enjoyed it. I really loved the new cast when I
Hmm.
watched it. I wanted to see more of Oscar Isaac and Finn's chemistry because
Hmm.
they got us really early on and they gave us a really good foundation with the Knights of Ren and Snoke and stuff. And I was interested to see what they do there. And then we've got The Last Jedi. Now, going into The Last Jedi, I couldn't wait to see it for two reasons. One, One, I really enjoyed The Force Awakens, and Rogue One was fantastic.
Oh, Rogue
My
One was
book.
incredible.
Okay. And the other reason why Ryan Johnson hadn't made a shit film in my,
Mhm.
that I'd ever seen. I actually championed Johnson going in. I was like, he's one of the best upcoming filmmakers. I loved Looper. I loved Brick, his indie film Brick, which was his first film. And what's it? He also did a couple of episodes of Breaking Bad, the one where
Mhm.
the DA agent,
Full
brother-in-law.
disclosure, I've never watched Breaking Bad.
Oh my God. All right, all right. Anyway, we'll get to that off topic.
Yeah.
So yeah, he done some of the best Breaking Bad episodes and stuff. So I was like, yeah, Ryan Johnson's going to knock this one out the park. Well, Last Jedi is probably one of the best looking shot Star Wars films ever made.
Hmm.
However, it's a fucking pile of wank, mate. I mean, yeah.
It
Here's the
is
thing. Here's the thing.
awful
I
film.
I I, I could get on board with grumpy Luke Skywalker. All right, hear me out. I could get on board with grumpy Jake Skywalker or whatever the hell the internet's calling him now, provided that we have a why, a good why. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? If there was a Greek tragedy where, maybe like, yeah, he lost his academy, but you got to make shit like that personal. Maybe Kylo accidentally killed his son, or like Mara Jade or something.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Then that's an unforgivable family drama there. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And then you're like, fuck, he's one bad day from the dark side. I could dig that, Luke
Oh,
Skywalker.
now that odd, but
You
if
know what
they
I
ever
mean?
want to do something, the spin off, I don't know how the fuck they would do
Yeah,
it, but if they ever do
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that, I'm
So,
watching.
so, and all I've done is taken what they've presented, but just changed the why, the why. It
Mm.
brings more
Because the
family
end of
drama.
Force Awakens left us thinking,
Yeah,
fucking hell. And then you go and watch that pile of shit, and
yeah,
you're just like, and then obviously they kill him off,
yeah. And when
and you're like, what?
he got killed, when he went like a fart in the wind, I was just like, all right, maybe there's more to this because Rebels was going around the same time, and I love Rebels. Okay,
Hmm.
Star Wars Rebels is probably the best thing Disney has ever done in my book.
Yeah,
Okay,
tied into the original series as well, which was
yeah.
good.
So it with Rebels, they introduced like the Bendu character, right?
Hmm.
What happens in season 3? He kind of metamorphoses into the Force and
Hmm.
disappears and shit. I thought maybe Luke Skywalker. I was holding out that Luke became a Bendu and shit, and we are going to see him fuck shit up in the next one. That
Mm.
was I was hoping. I was hoping. I was like, come on, there's a plan, right? There's a plan.
How wrong were you, my
Oh
friend?
my god! But that's just it. Like, Last Jedi was bad, but I actually don't like Rise of
I
Skywalker.
remember I posted, I
Yeah.
put on my Facebook, I was at the cinema watching it, and I saw your name come up, Sacha Allari's comment. I thought, oh fuck, I'm scared to open this. And I remember opening it, and you were just like going in on. You were like, dude, don't worry, don't the ending of this movie. They've screwed it up. They've messed it up. I mean, there was so when quickly heading towards the. At the minute, it's the last movie. We now know we're going to get number 10. Um, Rise of Skywalker. So many ways that movie could have been done. I, it's a trailer for me when you originally saw it and you saw the Death Star and you saw Palpatine or you heard Palpatine and you're thinking, hang on a minute, what? And then you get to the movie and she's bobbing a lost. Next thing she's on the Death Star and I'm just like, this movie is so fucking wrong on so many levels. Visually, it was good. The effects I didn't mind. The
Yeah, yeah.
story,
They
the
never get that wrong.
story for me though.
Yeah.
Come on, dude. I get you. Can't you? I remember to this day sitting at walking into the cinema, and I checked my Facebook, and you were the first person to comment saying, "Dude, I've seen this film. I need to know what you think of it straight after because you basically thought it was
Yeah,
fucking
yeah.
terrible." Is the way they left the Star Wars franchise with the Rise of Skywalker? First of all, how would you have done it?
That's a bigger podcast, dude. That's a
We haven't
bigger.
got time.
We
But do you
haven't
know what
got
I mean? It's
time.
such a
Yeah,
question. People,
yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of people are like, I would have done this, I would have done that. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
everyone was like, you're going to see, obviously Hayden Christian, you're going to see Mark Hamill. It's going to be, they're going to, and it was all that loads of CGI crap. And yeah, you technically saw Mark Hamill, but you didn't really. I mean, it was left so. for a franchise that I grew up with and that I loved, I wish I'd never seen that movie, and I wish that's never the way it ended. But they're gonna do number 10 now.
Maybe we'll see. I mean, I just read earlier on today that they've got like the fifth or sixth writer on the thing. They're starting from scratch
They're
again.
gonna do
So
it, dude. They're gonna make
so
10.
we'll see. We'll see. There's only so many times they could scrap scrap a project, you know what I mean? Like from scratch, eventually.
What did you make of the way it finished?
uh it was shit. I wanted to leave during the opening crawl, mate.
Honestly,
When you open a Star Wars movie saying Palpatine has returned, it's like, get the fuck out of here.
yeah,
But
no, how the fuck is this even possible?
how the fuck is this even possible? Now here's the thing. Some people listening that are pro all of this stuff, okay, hear me out. I go on one just a little bit.
Go for it, bro.
All right.
I knew this was going to be this kind of episode.
So all right. The first thing people, but in the expanded universe, in the comic books you read growing up, Palpatine comes back. It's like, yeah, bravo, you are right. You are absolutely 1000% right. He does. But here's the thing: there was no peace. There was no peace. The Empire was still at war with each other. And when Palpatine did come back, it was 5 years later, not 35, 40 years later. You know what I mean? It was 5 years later. You know what I mean? And they explained there that he never left. You know what I mean?
He had hooked up to this fucking machine.
Yeah,
he
had loads of clones. He had loads of clones. And then when he did come back really to fight Luke, he came back when he was young. You know what I mean? And it took Luke and Leia to fight him in Dark Empire. And more importantly, like I said, the Empire never left. It was still the rebels versus the Empire throughout past. Yeah, they took down Coruscant, the capital city, etc. But they were still at war with different star systems where the Empire with Thrawn and stuff kind of governed and shit. You know what I mean? It was more or less like a Cold War, So with the new films, they've established there's like been a new, peace and prosperity, and then all of a sudden this new what were they called, the First Order or whatever. They've come out of the shadows recently, and only Leia. I'm just going by what Episode 7 says. Only Leia is the one that's after on their ass and trying to flush them out, right? So that's what we got with these new films. So there's been peace, okay? So Palpatine's been in the shadows for like 40 years. You know what I mean? So this begs two really weird questions to me. If he's always been about, all right, and let's just say like he zapped him back into a clone body, all right, we knew all that he had clones anyway on Geonosis. Was it Geonosis? Not Geonosis. The clone planet in Episode 2, the water with the big long.
Yeah, I know the one.
Camino.
Yes.
Okay, Camino. So basically, like, sure, that I could believe he'd come back
that way
through a clone that way on Camino. You know what I mean?
But not the fucking way we saw.
But here's the other thing: if he'd come back, he would have done it right after Jedi. He would have been ping my new body.
Yeah, I'm back. Let's get this shit rolling again.
Back at the Senate the next, in about 2-3 days time, he's back in the Senate going, oh yeah, there was a fucking big explosion over there, but I wasn't there. I was here the whole time.
But it's not even like they gave anything like Force Awakens and the last. It's not even like they gave us any clues that he was still around. It's like the Rise of Skywalker. It's like the trailer come out and everyone's gone, what the fuck?
Yeah, and you'd think that'd be a big moment in a movie to like show how he came back, but they didn't do that.
No, they didn't even bother.
Because it wasn't planned. But here's the other thing which I think is ridiculous with him even being there. So in Force Awakens, what we know is everyone's looking, the First Order's looking for the map to Luke Skywalker, right? It's such a big deal. That's the plot of the fucking movie, right? Like, we got to find, everyone's trying to find Luke Skywalker like he's Where's Wally, right? Yeah, we go on to Rise of Skywalker, yeah, and we find out through some backstory that Luke and Lando decades ago were looking on the quest to find Palpatine.
Yeah,
because they thought Palpatine was alive. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. What kind of bullshit game of Marco Polo is this? He's looking for him here, and they're looking for him there, and no one's meeting up in the middle. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
This makes no sense. Who's writing this shit? You know,
I
like,
know.
come
That
on.
was one of the first times when I've watched a Star
Yeah.
Wars movie and I've gone, I fucking hate you, Disney. And so many people were online going, George Lucas is sitting somewhere watching this going, thank fuck I've got all my money because what have they done to the franchise I created? I mean, yeah. I mean, look,
Yeah.
it's in my top, it's probably my number one movie franchise of all time. I just don't like the way it ended. Satch, just quickly wrapping up, and we can get into, we're going to do more
Yeah.
episodes and stuff, doing Star Wars. And me and you could talk for hours about this. There's been so many TV spin-offs: Clone Wars, Rebels, Resistance, Bad Batch, Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Skeleton Crew, Obi-Wan, Acolyte, etc., etc., etc.
Mm.
I spoke to the brothers of the Geek Out podcast at the beginning of the week, and I said to them, "What do you think of spin-offs and reboots?" And Keeble, who I interviewed, hated them.
Mm.
As a huge Star Wars fan, what have you thought of all the spin-offs that they've done? We mentioned Rebels there. Rebels, I'm with you. Rebels and Clone Wars are my favorite. The animated series. Absolutely love them. I could
Yeah.
sit down right now after we recorded this and start them from the beginning because I think they're incredible. They tied up a bits of the story and I got to see Darth Maul again, etc., etc. With everything that they've done, Skeleton Crew, except just come out and that got actually quite good reviews.
Wasn't
From
too bad.
That wasn't too bad. What have you made of where the Star Wars franchise has gone on the TV side of it? An argument I get into with a lot of people is about Marvel is like I said at the start of the show, there's a gazillion TV spin-offs now.
Mm.
There's all the characters are in different versions of a TV spin-off. What have you made of what they've done with all the Star Wars TV spin-offs?
A little less convoluted compared to Marvel.
Mm,
Marvel was always going to be that way anyway. Not the way it went, but like, in terms of like
hmm
loads of stories, that's always kind of been a comic book thing. So yeah, you know what I mean. So I'm not going to comment too much on that. But in terms of Star Wars, each show is its own thing. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's some crossover, but you don't need to watch everything like you do
Do
maybe
with
a
Marvel.
Marvel.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you get to watch The
yeah,
Mandalorian and see Luke Skywalker turn up at the end.
yeah,
I
yeah.
fucking lost my shit.
Oh yeah, everyone did, man.
Incredible.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I feel differently about each Star Wars TV show. I do think certain ones have diluted the brand a lot.
Hmm
Some has been close but no cigar, and some would just, what the fuck was I watching?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like um Mandalorian's a high point. Third
Obi-Wan?
seat Obi-Wan. Okay, so I have to go a little bit in with Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan Obi-Wan was not as good as it could have been.
Hmm
However, this is the thing. The problem with Obi-Wan, it came out as a limited series,
hmm
right? So if it's a limited series, you've only got X amount of episodes to play with
Cram it all in.
to cram it all in. And the overall product was underwhelming because they clearly didn't have a plan with what they were doing in those episodes. You know what I mean? To make, when
I
you
think they
watch,
just wanted to get to Obi-Wan and Vader.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And they just created a lot of filler, a lot of bullshit
To get to the last
to get
episode,
to
which
the
is
last
kind of
episode.
like a movie, the way they made the last episode. It was like you're watching a
Yeah,
movie, really.
yeah. And the other thing is, it's like Vader shouldn't. Vader. Where's one thing? If you're gonna do that, Vader should really believe that Obi-Wan's dead. Because
Mm.
when they meet each other in A New Hope, you think he's shocked that the guy's still alive, right? So because it's a limited series, you're left like, well, this can't be it, right? There has to be more. You know,
I think something come out last week. They are making their
I think as it stands, Ewan McGregor wants to do more,
yeah,
but they haven't commissioned it yet.
yeah.
Um, to be honest, what they need to do with Obi-Wan to fix what they did with that show, they need to have a plan, like an actual plan,
hmm
knowing the end game is the fight where Vader thinks he's dead.
hmm
And you use the show, however many seasons you want to do it, to build up characters, give us an actual story. More importantly, one of the biggest criticisms of the prequels were that we never saw them as friends until we start watching Clone Wars.
Clone Wars when they're like best of buddies,
You
yeah.
would, how cool would it be
And
to
the
have,
start of Revenge of the Sith.
yeah, how cool would it be to
Mm.
have Clone Wars episodes
Oh, dude,
or an
that's why I
episode?
love Clone Wars.
There's so many things they could answer that we've never seen on screen, like what the dynamic between Anakin and the Lars family. Because
Hmm.
he's got a stepbrother who we
Hmm.
don't
That
really
we don't really
touch.
know. Yeah, no one
We
really
don't really
mentions
know.
it. Yeah.
You've also got the mission that Bail Organa, Leia's stepfather,
Hmm.
sends Obi-Wan on a mission with Anakin.
Mm.
You know what I mean? She goes,
Yeah.
years ago, you served my
Yeah,
father
you
in the
said my
Clone Wars.
father, yeah.
We've never seen that episode of Clone Wars.
Could you imagine?
Could you imagine if they did that in the show as a flashback?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That people lose their minds.
Yeah.
But
That's why they kind of touched on all that in Ahsoka, didn't they? They tried to squeeze it again.
Yeah.
Ahsoka come along and you're like, we're trying to cram everything in, and it was good.
And,
We got to saw Hayden Christensen,
and,
etc.
and
But
that's another one. Ahsoka, again, that was average. I mean, look, here's the thing. Ahsoka was good for people like you and me that love Clone Wars and Rebels,
Mhm.
right? But as a show standalone, it was garbage because if you didn't have an affiliation to the character, you're like, who the fuck is she?
yeah,
What they should have done, they should have had 5 episodes prior for people to invest in her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like get to know her, make it maybe more like The Mandalorian, where she's going place to place, taking names and faces, and
Mm.
then you build it up to this bigger, grander kind of thing. But they went all in on it. Maybe it's because it was a budgetary reason. Because this is the thing: whenever they do these high-end TV shows, they only have a certain amount of episodes to play, and that's kind of been Disney's kind of Achilles heel with these shows. Because when you look at how normal TV was, you had 25 episodes regardless. So
Yeah.
you had so many episodes where they were like, we got to create filler now. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Look at Superman and Lois, etc., like that, and
yeah,
what 18, 19 episodes per season, all 4 seasons of that
yeah,
was about
that's
19,
right.
19 episodes long. But yeah, no, I get what you
Yeah.
mean, my
So
man. But the TV stuff and the movies, etc., etc. Disney getting hold of Star Wars. Just wrapping up, Satch. What's the future look like for the Star Wars franchise, in your opinion?
it's a case by case, it's a case by case thing. Look, one day you'll get something like the Acolyte, which is a piece of dog shit.
It's been
Uh,
scrapped, isn't it? They axed it already, haven't they?
yeah, they've axed
They're
the
not making
season
season
two.
two. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
they're
not
not
making
making
season.
season two.
It was
That
awful.
was, to be honest, that's the
I
one
didn't
that
mind the first few episodes. I'm not gonna lie, sorry, but I didn't mind the first few episodes. Oh.
that's fine. I just thought it killed the whole franchise for me.
Was that
Again,
again? A lot of people say
again,
like that's
yeah,
Disney getting hold of Star Wars.
yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, Skeleton Crew was all right if people could be bothered to watch it. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. You know, I think if Skeleton Crew had come out off the cuff of The Mandalorian, it would have
Mm,
been a lot more well received, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Because Star Wars was, in general, the fandom was on a high then. You know what I mean?
Mm,
At the moment, it's kind of at an all-time low, and I think a lot of people have kind of had enough now. You know,
yeah.
I think this year we've got the release of the Mandalorian movie. Okay,
Mm,
so all eyes are on that. Now, I have 1000% faith in John Favreau. Okay. He's never done a step wrong, you know? So, I think it'll be all right personally, but I do think the wider audiences in general have had enough, because it
mm,
shows in the figures at the moment. I
yeah.
personally think Star Wars needs a break for a few years
Mm.
and then come back with something nice, fresh, and do you know what I mean? That
Yeah,
people
get
want to
up a
see
new
again.
audience. Yeah, I
Yeah,
get you, mate. I get you. I get you.
needs a
Well,
bit of a
Satch, it's
rest.
been
Yeah.
incredible for the last hour to talk some Star Wars. We've treated over the originals, the prequels, the quote unquote Disney era of Star Wars, my man. We're definitely going to get you back on to. We're going to be doing some film reviews, some more Star Wars chat. I'm going to do a few Back to the Future episodes where I will let you know off air who I've got coming on that
Okay.
episode. Let's just say they're in the movie. That's all I'll say.
Ah, okay.
That's all I'll say. But brother, I really appreciate you jumping on my little new project over here at Completed It, and I will definitely get you back on in the future, my man.
Definitely. I'll wait the call.
No worries. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check us out on social media at Completed It Pod on X, you can also go onto YouTube and just type in Completed It Podcast. But I've been your host, Andy Burrows. We'll be back next week with more content and pop culture. Till then, everybody, stay safe.